Hi everyone! So in this video we're going to be getting our feet wet and getting familiar with the software by creating a basic reference map. So a reference map is meant to be unbiased and simply refers to spatial features. So the main concepts we're going to be covering in this lab are as follows. We're going to be looking at a vector model of space and the three vector geometries we covered in the last video, though this time we're going to be implementing them in the actual software. We're also going to talk about a layer versus a feature again and look at feature attributes. And finally, we're going to be discussing a new topic, which is network as opposed to Euclidean distance. And as an example, we're going to be creating a simple map for a prospective Middlebury student from Boston who's coming to visit over break while you are not here. And he's asked if you could do three things. So first, he's asked if you could point out where the campus is on a map. Second, show some points of interest on campus, such as where you live and some other spots worth visiting. And third, he's asked if you could suggest some restaurants nearby where he and his parents can go for dinner. Okay, sounds pretty easy. We're going to get started with the map. Okay, so remember this is where we ended off, or where we left off at the end of the first video. So we've got our nice little user interface, and we're going to start off by clicking New Map. You notice it'll load, and I'll start off with a map of the US. So we're going to go to the top left and click where it says Untitled Map. And we're going to name this map Middlebury and surrounding area. Map for my friend from Boston. Okay, then we're gonna hit save. Okay. Now as a quick note, you don't need to manually save your map with Google Maps Engine. Like Google Docs, your map is constantly being saved automatically so you don't lose data, which is a handy feature. You can see right here it says saved, meaning that it's already saved everything for you. So let's point out a couple of features. So this little folder icon over here gives us several options. The only ones we're really concerned with right now would be New Map, Open a Map, which would be if you had an existing map, and Delete this map. We're not going to worry about these two, which are more complicated right now. We have Add a Layer, which would be if we wanted to add an extra layer. Notice that we already have one right here, which is so far untitled. Next, over here, we've got some nice icons. We've got this little hand, what they say is select items, which is true. It does allow you to select features on the map, but it also allows you to kind of pan around and change what you're looking at. You've got zoom in and out here. This next one is called Add a Marker, and that's going to be when we start adding points to our map. The next one is Draw a Line. This one also creates polygons, so between these two we can create our three different geometry types. We've got Add Directions, which will be useful later on. This is similar to how Google Maps directions work. I think it's actually the same. And then for those of you who are using Pro, we've also got Measure Distances and Areas, which is this little icon, which is pretty handy. So let's name our layer first of all. This first one, we're going to be answering the first part of this question, which was where campus is. So let's go to, it'll be the same way, we just click on where it says Untitled Layer, and we're going to edit the layer name. I'm going to call this Middlebury College. I'm going to say save. This is where we're going to store the feature that we're going to create to show the boundaries of the college campus. So one way we could find the college campus is by simply scrolling in and panning around until we finally got there. But a far easier way to do it would be to simply search for it up here. So as a general rule, anything you could find in Google Maps, you can find in Google Maps Engine using the search box, which is very handy. So this includes things like businesses, services, addresses, cities, countries, or even latitude and longitude coordinates. So let's type in Middlebury College. and here we go. So we're going to click Middlebury College, and it brings us right here. So now notice we not only did our result appear on the map right here, but it also appeared on our left-hand menu as this little green icon. However, I want to point out that it's not in our layer yet, right here, and that's because while we found our location, we haven't yet made it a feature. So once it's actually stored as a feature, it'll be in either this layer or if we create another layer. So the first thing we're going to do is map out the campus. So you notice that Google is giving us a point for the campus. And this is what Google normally likes to do, is that it tries to always assign features as a point. So even if you typed in a country, it will show you the country and it'll show you the boundaries, but the actual point the actual feature it'll give you will be a point, which really doesn't always make sense, because if our friend is walking around campus, it doesn't do him all that much good to know where this point is. That is the center of campus, but that's missing a whole bunch of the rest of this campus. And the campus actually has two dimensions, right? It's got length and it's got width. It's actually a fairly big piece of property. So thinking back to our vector world, how could we represent the campus using one of our vector geometries? So what do you think we would use for this campus? We'd use a polygon, right? Right, so let's grab our draw a line feature, and I'm just going to do a real quick polygon of where the campus is. So you notice this is really easy. I can just click around, and it's nice. It looks like this darker polygon in this layer for some reason is the college campus, more or less. I'm just going to make it more visible and make this a feature so that I can add attributes to it if I want. Here we go. I'm just going to start making this easier. Okay, and so you notice when I get to the end of my polygon, I am going to get this little hand sign. You see how that came up? And I'm going to click on that point, and it'll create this feature. So, and Google's going to ask me for a name for this feature. I'm going to call it campus. And the second box we're not going to worry about for right now, but here you can add an image and I think a video using a URL, but it's not really important right now. And then we can add a description underneath. I'll just say Middlebury College Campus Extent. You could add anything you wanted and hit save. You'll notice for those of you who have Pro, we immediately get, this is very handy, we immediately get the area of this polygon that we've created in both acreage and in miles, which is really nice, an automatic feature. And you'll notice that this feature has now been put into our layer, Middlebury College, and it's represented here as a polygon with this little symbol. And so now we've got our first feature in our first layer. Okay, so now that we've answered that first question, I'm going to get rid of this. So if I want to get rid of something I've searched for, I'm going to go up here and just click X. Okay, so next I'm going to mark some significant points on campus. I'm going to create a new layer for these points just to make it better for organization. So you notice that when I went up here and click Add a Layer, I can immediately get another untitled layer, but you see this blue bar right here? So that lets you know that which layer you're currently in. So see if I go back and forth. So when you are creating features, you want to make sure that the layer that you want that feature to be in has this blue bar here, is highlighted. Because if I do, let's say if I decide all of a sudden I want to move this feature to another layer, you notice unfortunately I can't do that. So if I did want this feature to be in this layer, I would unfortunately have to delete it and then recreate it in the layer that I originally wanted it in. That's just something to note. So for this layer, I'm going to call this, let's see, points of interest on campus, and hit, let's see, save. So now that our new layer is highlighted, I'm going to start plotting some points. So let's see, this time I'm going to plot a point manually. I'm going to plot where I used to live on campus. So I'm going to zoom in and find it. So I used to live right here at Hepburn Hall. So I'm going to go back up here to where geometries are. I'm going to click add a marker. And then this is really easy. I can just click exactly where I want it to be. And you'll notice that this marker or point comes right up. And I'm going to call this Hepburn. God, I can't type. Hepburn Hall. And I'm going to say my sophomore year dorm. And then I'm going to click save. So you notice this time we've created an attribute, or this is our attribute, for a point rather than a polygon, but it works the same way. So I'm only going to do one more point for time's sake, and that'll be the Davis Family Library, which is the main library on campus. And this time I'm going to use our handy search bar and type in Davis Family and it comes right up. Nice. I don't know why it zooms out so much. I'll zoom in and take a look at that to make sure it's right. Yep, and here's the library. It knew exactly where it was. So if I look for something on the map and I do decide that I want to make it a feature, I can just click on it on the map, on the icon, and say add to map. Great. And see how it's right there? Nice. And then if I wanted to add attribute data, I can go in here and click edit, which is this little pencil icon, and I can add more information. So I'm going to move on to our last part, which was finding restaurants. So we're going to try to find some restaurants that are close to campus that I would recommend for my friend. And while I could go through and map some restaurants manually, if I can think of the names or maybe, I don't know, zoom in and kind of scroll around, Google has this handy feature which also works in Google Maps, which is the near function. So I can literally just type in restaurants near Middlebury College, and this should work. Let's see. Yeah, how cool is that? So it immediately comes up with all of these results and, within a reasonable radius. Now, one thing that's been bugging me that I can't for the life of me figure out is how Google decides which results to show first. Because when you put the same search into Google Maps, you get a slightly different order, but the same restaurants. Now, the logical order would be whatever restaurants are closest to the point I said near to. So in this case, whatever restaurants are closest to Middlebury campus. But that brings up another issue. So let's see, what's the problem if I just measure, and I'm going to, for those of you who have light, don't worry about this. I'm doing this more to demonstrate. So if let's say I'm going to use this as the Middlebury College Campus Center. So what's the problem if I'm measuring distances if I just go from my beginning point to, let's say in this case, I'm going to go to Two Brothers Cafe, which is right here. If I just measure distance like this, that's not how I'd actually get there, is it? Even if we were to walk, we'd probably come across some obstacles like buildings or trees or private property in our way. So it would make more sense to make the closest restaurant the one which is closest by walking or driving rather than this kind of as the crow flies kind of distance. So in geography, we differentiate between these two different distances in the following way. So there's Euclidean distance, which is this distance that we've just measured, which is basically distance as the crow flies. And this kind of distance isn't always useful because it doesn't reflect the way we as humans actually move through space. And the second kind of distance, let me get out of this, would be the kind of distance that Google gives you when you look up directions, which is called Navquart distance. And this better reflects how we move through space. So in our example, real quick, I'm just going to choose my 3 favorite restaurants and make them as points, and then we're going to look at how we would get there using these 2 different distances. So I'm just going to pick, I'm going to pick Two Brothers, Storm, and American Flatbread. Okay, and then I'm going to get rid of the rest just to get rid of some junk. Okay, So if I wanted to figure out how I would get to these restaurants, I could go through here and manually create a line, kind of the way we did with a polygon, and draw it out to get there. And I would have to be careful of rotaries and all of that fun stuff Middlebury has. So I'd create a line. I'm not going to keep this. I'm just going to accept the default. And I would get a distance right here if I had Pro. But the problem with this is that it doesn't really tell me how long it would actually take to get there. So Google actually has a pretty handy feature that will immediately tell us network distance. So the easiest thing to do is to click on the point where you want to go, which would be right here. Oh, so you guys see what I just did over here in my layer view? I forgot to create another layer that just had all the points off campus, the restaurants that I wanted to look at. Okay, so if I was doing this better, I would create another layer and that would say points of interest off campus or restaurants, and I would have put these three in there. I'm not going to go back and do it. I think you guys can figure that part out. So back to directions. Network distance. So if I wanted to find directions from, let's say, the Davis Family Library, just to make it easier, to, let's say, to Two Brothers, I would click on where I wanted to go, and you see what comes up. And then I would go to this little icon right here, which is directions to here. It is very handy. And notice Google is going to create a new layer, and specifically for directions. So let's say, so we've got Two Brothers here. When I do go, let's say Davis Family Library, it will come up and it'll show that I've already made this a feature. So I can click on this. And look how handy that is. So immediately not only creates directions for me, but shows them on the map. And if I went here to step-by-step instructions, it would tell me how long or what the distance is to get there. And this is, remember, network distance, not as the crow flies Euclidean distance. And it would tell me how long it would be driving. So one caveat to this is that this isn't actually a feature, unfortunately. So while we do have it, it is something in a layer. I'm saying that it's not a feature because if I click on it, I get nothing. I can't add attribute data to it. You know, if I could go now back and make a line of this and, you know, give it what the distance was and how long it took me to get there, but Google's not going to give it to me right away. Okay, so obviously you could edit more of this, but for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and share what I've got so far with my friend. Now, this works the same way that Google Docs does, in that I have a whole bunch of ways to share this. So I'm going to go up to this top right-hand corner and click Share. Right, so this is the same interface you would get if you were doing a Google Doc. I can share via Gmail, Google+, Facebook, Twitter, all these things. So the easiest way to share is through a URL. And then over here it says who can access it. So I'm going to change this. So I can make this public on the web so anyone can find access. I can make it for anyone who has the URL, if I could copy and paste that, say, and email it or anything like that. And you notice it says no sign-in required. So even if my friend doesn't have a Google account, they can still view it. Let's say that. I'll do that since I'm not sure if he does or not. And then I can choose so anyone can view, which just means they get to look at what I've created, or I can allow anyone to edit it. So he could go back in there and change which restaurants he liked. He could add comments on it. He could add other restaurants. He could add questions about other features, which I didn't cover in here. So I will say can edit. And then I'm going to click Save. And done.